When Emily accepted the midnight caretaker job at a remote cowboy's ranch, she thought she was just running from her past seeking silence, distance, and a fresh start. But the ranch owner, a rugged cowboy who kept to himself, watched her arrival with a look that was far from surprise. Because he had been waiting for her, not for days, not for weeks, but since spring, when a promise, a letter, and a moment of fate tied their lives together long before she ever arrived. This night, this meeting was no accident, and Emily was about to learn why. The bus rumbled along the dark highway like a tired giant moving through a lonely world. Emily Carter pressed her forehead against the cold glass and watched telephone poles flash by one after another, forming a rhythm that matched the ache in her chest. She did not cry. She had done that enough. Her life had collapsed in a single week. Her long-term boyfriend had walked out with someone else. Her apartment lease had been canceled. Her savings drained by medical bills from her mother's illness. And the job she had depended on, working nights at a downtown cafe, had disappeared after the owner sold the business without warning. The world had not ended, but something inside her had gone quiet. Now she sat on a bus heading into a part of the countryside she had never seen before, clutching a phone that held a single job offer, one that absolutely no one else wanted. Caretaker, midnight shift, Walker Ranch, Silver Valley. Immediate start. Housing provided. Good pay. The message had been brief. No interview, only instructions. Arrive tonight. Come to the barn. Ask for James. The job had sounded strange, but it was the only door still open to her. The bus hissed to a stop at a crossroads where nothing stood but a wooden sign, a broken street light, and a dirt road fading into darkness. "This is you," the driver said. Emily nodded, stepped off, and watched the bus disappear into the night until the headlights became tiny stars and then nothing at all. Silence swallowed her. A cold wind pushed against her coat. She looked down the dirt road leading into miles of shadow. "Well," she whispered to herself, "the only way out is forward." She started walking. After 20 minutes on the lonely road, a soft glow appeared ahead, warm lights stretching across open fields. The silhouette of a massive ranch emerged under the moonlight, its wooden fences silvered by frost. Walker Ranch. The name hung above a tall archway in elegant metal letters. Beyond it, barns, corrals, and a large ranch house stood peacefully against the star-filled sky. Horses shifted in their stalls. Crickets hummed in the grass. The world was quiet, untouched, timeless, and then she saw him. A man stepped out of the barn holding a lantern. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a worn denim jacket and a hat pulled low. The lantern light cast golden shadows on his rugged face. His movements were steady, purposeful, like someone who belonged deeply to the land. But what struck her most was not his appearance. It was the way he looked at her. Not with suspicion, not with impatience, but with something else, quiet recognition. As though he had been expecting her. As though he already knew who she was. Emily hesitated at the gate. The man lifted the lantern higher. "Are you Emily Carter?" His voice was warm but carried the weight of a man used to speaking little and meaning every word. "Yes," she replied softly. He nodded once. "I am James Walker. Thank you for coming." He stepped aside to let her pass. As she walked toward him, the light illuminated her tired face, the dirt on her shoes, and the hollowness behind her eyes. James noticed all of it and said nothing. Instead, he simply murmured, "You came a long way." He studied her gently, almost thoughtfully. "Yes," he whispered. "I know." James led her into the main barn. It was warm, filled with soft breathing and the comforting scent of hay and horses. Lanterns hung from hooks, casting pools of golden light that swayed gently with the breeze. "This will be your workspace from midnight until sunrise," he said. "Your duties are simple. Check the horses every hour, walk the grounds, make logs. Keep the foals calm." Emily nodded politely, taking mental notes. "And this job is really only at night?" she asked. "Yes, only night. Why?" He paused. "There are 2 reasons," he said quietly. "The first is that I need someone I can trust while the ranch sleeps. And the second?" He took a slow breath, as if weighing whether to continue. Finally, he said, "Because the nights are when the horses remember. They feel storms even when the sky is clear." Emily blinked. "Feel storms?" James nodded. "You will understand soon." He handed her a worn notebook. This is your logbook. Your room is above the barn. Fresh linens and a heater are inside. If you need anything, you call me. Thank you, she said. He nodded again, but he did not walk away. He simply looked at her, quietly, thoughtfully, almost painfully. Is something wrong? Emily asked. No, he said quickly. But his eyes told a different story, one filled with a memory, a secret, or a longing he could not yet speak aloud. James Walker was a man who held many words inside, and it would take time before any of them found their way out. Emily climbed the wooden stairs to her room. The space was simple yet comforting: a small bed, a wooden dresser, a desk, and a window overlooking the moonlit fields. But one thing drew her attention immediately: a framed letter on the wall. It looked old, water-stained, edges torn as though rescued from a storm. The handwriting was neat, delicate, strangely familiar. Emily stepped closer, reading the words. To the owner of the frightened horse. I am sorry I left without explaining. He was trapped near the riverbank, kicking wildly, terrified. I did the best I could. I hope he lives. Signed, a passing stranger. Emily froze. Her breath halted. The words, the handwriting, the memory. It was hers. She remembered writing that note 6 months ago, during a spring storm that had nearly swept her car off the road. She had seen a panicked horse tangled in broken fencing near a river. Without thinking, she had waded into freezing water, calmed the animal, and freed it. She had left a note on a barn door nearby because no one had been around. But she had never returned to see who owned the ranch. Never even known the name. And now here she stood, staring at her own handwritten note, framed on the wall of Walker Ranch. Her heart pounded. Why was it here? Why had he kept it? Why had he framed it? Emily sat on the bed, her hands trembling. Something was happening, something far bigger than a job offer or a late-night shift. But she did not yet know what. Below her, in the barn, James Walker stood leaning against the stall door, staring up at the dark window where Emily's room now stood. His heart was loud in his ears. Finally, he whispered. You came! He remembered the night 6 months ago with perfect clarity, the storm howling like an angry god, lightning splitting the sky, rain flooding the pastures. One of his best horses, Bluebell, had vanished into the chaos. He had searched for hours. When he found Bluebell the next morning, she had been calm, warm, safe, and tied gently inside an old wooden shelter with a note pinned to her bridle. A note written by a stranger. A note written by her, Emily. He had read it again and again until the paper nearly tore. He had asked every nearby town and ranch if anyone knew a woman fitting her description. He had driven to bus stations, shops, rest stops searching. And then he had framed the letter, because it was all he had. And because something inside James knew deeply, instinctively, that the woman from the storm would one day return. Dozens of people had come. None of them had been her. But he had waited anyway, and now she was here. James slowly removed his hat and pressed his hand against the stall door, steadying himself. Welcome home, Emily, he whispered, though she could not hear him. Welcome home. At midnight, Emily began her rounds. The barn was peaceful, brushing against her heart like a gentle lullaby. Horses shifted softly, hooves scraping straw. The foals nudged her hands with warm noses. The lantern lights glowed in golden halos. She felt safe for the first time in months. While she walked the property, she breathed in the crisp night air and marveled at the stars spread across the sky like glitter. James had not lied. The horses did seem strangely aware at night, lifting their heads toward the horizon as if sensing something invisible. When Emily returned to the barn, James stood by the doorway. Oh, she startled. I did not expect you, he nodded. I know. I just wanted to be sure you settled in. I did. Thank you. He hesitated, then said, If anything ever frightens you out here, call me immediately. Do not wait. Why would anything frighten me? The land remembers things, he said softly. Especially storms, Emily frowned. I do not understand. You will. Then he tipped his hat slightly. Good night, Emily. Her heartbeat quickened at the gentle warmth in his voice. Good night, James. He held her gaze a little too long before finally walking away. Nights passed. Emily grew comfortable with her duties, soothing restless horses, steadying fragile foals, and walking through moonlit fields that became familiar and beautiful. But something else grew too, James. Every night, he appeared briefly to check on her, pretend he had business in the barn, or bring her a thermos of hot cocoa just because the nights get cold. Every time he saw her, his eyes softened in a way that warmed her from the inside. And yet, he always looked like a man holding something unsaid. One night after making her rounds, she found him standing by Bluebell's stall, brushing the horse's mane gently. "She likes you," James murmured. "I like her too," Emily said. Bluebell nuzzled her hand. Emily laughed softly. "She is the gentlest horse I have ever met." "She was not always," James replied. "Something changed her. Changed her how?" "She used to panic every time it thundered. She would run into fences, injure herself, scream until she collapsed." He paused. "But after the spring storm, after someone saved her, she became calmer, braver." Emily looked at Bluebell, her hand instinctively stroking the horse's neck. Something stirred inside her: recognition, disbelief, fear, hope. "Who saved her?" Emily whispered, though she already knew. James looked at her with eyes full of meaning. "You did!" Emily's breath vanished. She stepped back. Her pulse raced. "How do you—" He pulled a small folded paper from his jacket pocket. Her letter, the original. He held it gently, as though it were a treasure. "I knew the moment you walked through the gate," he said quietly. "I've been waiting for you since spring." Emily's hand shook. Tears gathered in her eyes. "But why?" "I was just a stranger." James shook his head. "No. You were the only person who saved what mattered to me when I had nothing left." "What do you mean?" "For months before that storm," he said, voice heavy, "I was losing everything. My father died. The ranch nearly went bankrupt. I lost horses to illness. And Bluebell, my father's horse, was the last piece of him I had." His voice broke slightly. "When she disappeared in the storm, I thought I had failed my father again. But then you found her. You saved her. You saved the ranch. You saved—" "Me." Emily covered her mouth. He stepped closer, but not too close, giving her space while his eyes spoke every word his lips could not. "So I promised myself, if I ever saw you again, I would thank you properly." He paused. "And I would not let you walk away quietly a second time." Emily sat down on a bale of hay, trembling. "I never expected anything," she whispered. "I just saw a terrified horse and reacted." "Anyone would have done the same." James shook his head. "No. Dozens of cars passed that night. Only yours stopped." She looked down. Tears fell silently. She had spent so long feeling invisible, forgotten, unimportant. But here was a stranger who had held her memory like something sacred. "I could not find you," James continued. "I searched for months. That note? I left it quickly. I was afraid someone would think I was trespassing." He gave a soft smile. "If only you knew how long I stood in that rain wishing you would come back." Emily laughed through tears. "I never imagined the cowboy from that storm would be you." He tilted his head, voice gentle. "And what do you imagine me to be, Emily?" She looked at him, really looked at him. At the quiet strength in his posture, the kindness in his weathered eyes, the way he seemed carved from the land itself. "You are—" "A man who waits when the world tells him not to," she whispered. James swallowed. He did not deny it. Weeks passed. Emily settled into life on the ranch, and little by little, the broken parts of her heart began to heal. She learned the horses' names by memory. She laughed again, something she had forgotten how to do. She found comfort in silence, in work, in moonlight reflected on acres of open fields. And she found something else too, James. Though he spoke little, his presence was steady, grounding, warm. He asked about her past, listening without judgment. He protected her without smothering her. He saw her without asking her to be anything except herself. One night, while walking along the fence line, James stopped abruptly. "I have something for you," he said. Emily blinked. "For me?" He reached into his coat and pulled out a small leather-bound journal. "You write," he said simply. "How do you know?" He smiled faintly. "Your handwriting. It has a storyteller's curve." Emily blushed. "I used to write. Before life got too heavy." "Well," he said, "now life is lighter." She opened the journal. Inside the first page, he had written, "Your words saved my horse. Maybe now your words can save you too." "James." Tears filled her eyes. She closed the journal against her heart. "Why are you so kind to me?" she whispered. James looked out at the moonlit fields, his voice quiet. "Because some people come into your life only once," he said. And when they do, you hold on to them. Winter crept into the valley. One night, thunder growled across the horizon. Emily stiffened. Bluebell shifted nervously. James immediately stepped beside them. "It is all right," he murmured, placing a hand on the horse's neck. "No storms can touch you now," but the memories flooded back. Lightning, water rising, cold wind cutting through her coat. The fear that the horse would die. The fear that she would. James noticed her trembling. He guided her gently to a stool in the corner and knelt in front of her, his hands steady on hers. "You are safe," he whispered. "I do not like storms. I know. You were not there. I am here now." She looked at him, really looked, at his soaked hat, his steady gaze, the warmth in his eyes. "You waited for me," she whispered. "All these months, yes. Why?" James took a slow, careful breath. "Because I knew," he said, his voice almost breaking, "that the woman who saved Bluebell was meant to be part of my life. Not for a moment, but for a long, long time." Emily's heart swelled and ached at the same time. The storm rumbled again. She flinched. James gently lifted her chin so she would look at him. "You saved a horse," he said. "But you saved me too. How?" "You reminded me that goodness still existed. That strangers still stop in the rain. That someone out there still believes in doing the right thing." Emily wiped her tears. "You waited for me," she whispered again. James nodded. "Every night." Then he said the words that broke her completely open. "This ranch was empty until you walked back into it. When the storm passed, the first rays of dawn stretched across the valley like golden fingers reaching into the barn." Emily stood beside James in the open doorway, the cold wind brushing their faces. He looked at her with a gentleness she had never been given before. "You came here because you needed a job," he said softly. "Yes, but you stayed because you needed somewhere to heal." Emily looked down, her heart soft. "I stayed," she said quietly, "because someone here was waiting for me before I even knew I needed to be found." James exhaled slowly, his eyes warm. "I do not want to lose you again," he whispered. "You will not," she replied. He smiled, a rare, full, breathtaking smile that transformed his entire face. "So," he said, "I would like to make this permanent. The job?" She asked. "No," he said gently. "Your place here," Emily blinked. "My place?" "Yes," he said. "As long as you want it. This ranch is yours as much as it is mine, and if you choose, I would like to build something together." Emily felt her breath catch. "James, you do not need to answer today," he said. "Or tomorrow. I will wait as long as you need. I waited since spring. I can wait longer." A tear slipped down her cheek. She shook her head softly. "You do not need to wait," she whispered. He froze. She stepped closer, placing her hand on his chest, feeling the strong, steady beating of his heart. "You waited for me," she said. "Now let me stay for you." James closed his eyes, relief washing over him like a warm wave. He gently wrapped his arms around her, careful not to rush, not to claim, not to overwhelm, just holding her with the tenderness of a man grateful for a miracle. The morning sun rose, and Emily Carter, who had boarded a bus believing her life was over, found a home, a purpose, and a man who had waited for her long before she ever knew she was coming. Spring returned to the valley. Bluebell grazed peacefully. Foals ran through the fields. The ranch thrived again. Emily's laughter filled the barn like soft music. James's quiet smile followed her wherever she walked. And inside their home, now their home, a frame still hung on the wall. Her letter, the one she wrote as a stranger, now rewritten by life into something far greater. Because sometimes fate does not shout. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it leaves a note on a barn door. Sometimes it waits through storms, seasons, and silence. Sometimes it brings a woman to a ranch at midnight to find the cowboy who had been waiting for her since spring.